ready. You're ready.
Probably October. So Friday's probably my last day.
So what do
It's kind of been these last 2 or 3 weeks. Kind of been like,
Yeah.
running for office.
you when you retire? You'll think about it.
Bug Veronica and bug.
You're going to become a substitute teacher.
Survey full time, right?
Become a substitute teacher.
How much do they get? Yeah.
No, you can't.
No.
First of all, you can't while you're
She's
sitting
kidding.
on the board.
She's kidding. No, you can't, that's right.
But
You can't pay
even if you did, they don't pay you much. It's about.
I know it's kind of scary to think about. But this next 30 days, I got to concentrate on the election.
No, Albuquerque is looking for lots of teachers.
Yes, they are.
300.
Did you see that some of the people didn't pass the clearance?
Background
Hey, I'm
checks.
starting a board meeting right now. Can I call you back either later or tomorrow morning?
And there's 100 of them out.
I don't know. I read that. I heard that on the
I saw it
news
on
the
the
other
news.
night, and I think it's confusing what the real issue is. But some people,
Some of it's late, it's just late.
yeah, and some did not pass the background check, or it's got caught up. I mean,
Can
for
I give
me,
these
when
to
I
you
went
to
through
give
a
to Alma or whoever?
background check, it took 2 years.
Thank you.
But the problem is because
Okay.
of all the clearances
You
I
ready?
held in the military. That
I was
and
wondering-
and people would say, what? And I says, no, it's because of the clearances. It takes a long time for them to.
See, when I first started working here, the only thing I had to have was a TB test.
Yeah.
What is that, like
That's
a
all I had
monitor?
to have was a TB test. You know, I passed.
All right, we're starting. Yeah, Amanda, she must have gotten tied up in traffic or something. Yeah. Thank you very much for getting this done on such short notice. Okay. Is there like is there any cabinet coming tonight, or are they just all having that off? What?
No, Tom's there. So you need to put that gavel down and get it going, and they'll show up.
How hard is it from downstairs? Does Lisa work upstairs? Okay, we'll go ahead and start.
They have
Is-
the breakfast, and then they also have.
Okay.
Is Charlotte here for something legal?
And you're not doctor, huh?
Oh, the luncheon.
Okay, let's go. All right. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. And we're going to start, please, with the Pledge of Allegiance in New Mexico flag in both English and in Spanish. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo de Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico and this is a symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Saludo la bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, el símbolo sea de amistad perfecta entre cultural unidas. Don't you guys do that every morning at school? No. Seriously, no? You do the English part. Please say you do the English part. You do it for announcement. Please say you do the English part. Okay. All right. Okay. Before we go on to the approval of the agenda, I'd like to state that, for the record, that Ms. Kate Noble is not here this evening, but we're very happy that Ms. Price is here this evening. So it's very nice to see you, and then we also have our student board members here tonight as well.
Mr. President, just also on that note, I'd like to recognize a former board member and our state
I was just gonna do that
representative.
too. Great.
This is Linda Trujillo. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for your service on the board and your service in the Roundhouse. You know, whenever I make those sweeping statements about the legislature, it doesn't include you. Okay, and I know you kind of knew that. We love our northern delegation, that's for sure. Okay, next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, so move.
second it.
The only change that I have is under acceptance of ArtSmart. Is there anybody here from ArtSmart right now? No, I know I'm expecting Amanda. So if Amanda is able to make it, I'm going to pull that off for a little separate acknowledgement. Is that okay with everybody relative to the agenda?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So hearing no other discussion, all right, vote on the agenda. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Next item on the agenda is board announcements and the introduction of our interpreter for this evening.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Deputy Superintendent, my name is Carlos Martinez, and I am pleased to introduce myself as your interpreter for this evening. If you need my services, I'll be seated in the back of the auditorium. Señor Presidente, damas y caballeros de la mesa directiva y superintendente, es mi placer en presentarme como el intérprete para esta noche. Me llamo Carlos Martínez y voy a estar sentado al fondo del auditorio si me necesitan. Gracias. Thank you.
Yeah, usually it's written down. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda, which is always super fun, it's the Santa Fe High School Demon Chamber Ensemble. And if it's okay, I'm messing up your exact title. You're the big cheese when it comes to music and everything. No, our Director of Music in the schools, Leanne Devon, if you wouldn't mind introducing the ensemble, that'd be great, because there's not notes on my sheet tonight. And I know you know the Director of the ensemble and everything else. Thank you very much for the work you do and for stepping in at the last moment.
Good evening. This is the Santa Fe Demon Chamber Ensemble. They have grown out of a growing orchestra program at Santa Fe High School, and they are here to perform a piece by Mozart, which they can pronounce better than I can. Your director is Gabe Tafoya.
Thank you.
This is our Santa Fe High School Demon Chamber Ensemble. This is the first year that we've done something like this. So we have 3 levels of orchestra at Santa Fe High School. We have a beginning level, an intermediate level, and an advanced level. And there's generally an enormous level gap in the advanced level group. So all of these players are like our top players from the advanced group. We have 3 of them who are going to be auditioning for All-State. You guys raise your hand. And Justin, our bass player, has been to All-State 2 years in a row already, and is hoping to get it again this year. Youth Symphony. How many of you guys are in the Youth Symphony? Right? I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I can put out there. So our orchestra program at Santa Fe High School is growing a lot. This is my 3rd year with the orchestra program at Santa Fe High School, and our numbers have grown from about 20-something total in the orchestra program to close to 60 this year. So the numbers have grown a lot in the past couple of years, and the quality has grown a lot in the last couple of years. I'm super proud of these guys. And they don't need me to conduct. They're doing their whole chamber ensemble thing. So without further ado, they're playing Eine kleine Nachtmusik by Mozart. So we guys can see where we're at. I forgot to mention one thing. Naomi, our first violinist here, actually received this instrument that she's playing last year through the Santa Fe Symphony's instrument scholarship program. And so that went out in the music newsletters last year. So, you know, we're excited to have that program. Thank you all so much. That's all we've got for you this evening, but thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We'll see you soon. I'll be back.
Crazy. Wow. I was right.
Thank you so much, Gabe and the others. Just, Linda, you remember what an amazing treat to have our musicians and our singers and all the people come perform for us. And then also what I'd like to do first, I'd like to thank you again, Leanne, because, you know, programs don't flourish the way they're doing in Santa Fe Public Schools without great staff, but also without great leadership. So thank you very much for the gift that you give to all of our children in the district. Thanks.
I was remiss in not saying Dr. Garcia is not with us this evening. She didn't have a day job. No, Dr. Garcia is with family in San Diego, which is good for her to take some time. So with us this evening is Deputy Superintendent Linda Sink, and I can assure you that if we need her, but I don't think we will, she's available by phone. Dr. Garcia is, but we've all gone over everything exhaustively relative to the agenda this evening. And Ms. Sink does point something out to me. We do have counsel here this evening on action item 10B, the resolution with regards to the ground lease. And so because of that, if it's okay with, I know we already did the agenda, but if it's okay with the board, and if it's not, it's not. But if it's okay with the board, if after superintendent update and follow-up, we can go right to resolution 10B and then back to the ETN. Is that okay? Does anybody not want that? Okay, great. Good? Ms. Sink? Great. So other board announcements. I actually have, and I know Maureen probably does, but I do. It was in the paper, but since not very many people read newspapers these days, holding them or online, I would like to congratulate Peter Graham. Peter Graham is a teacher at Santa Fe High School for years and years and years, an inspirational coach, and he was awarded, he was just inducted, if you will, into the Adams State College Hall of Fame. And so the inspiration and hard work, the inspiration for our kids and the hard work that Peter puts in both as a teacher and a coach are extremely admirable, and we are very, very grateful to have Peter as part of our district. And on another note, are you mentioning this or am I? I will. I asked Maureen, because Maureen's always on top of these things much more than I am. I didn't know this until yesterday. October is National Principals Month, okay? And I think anybody that's been paying attention in Santa Fe Public Schools and to our board knows how much we value our principals, know how much we value your leadership, your mentorship, and I think all of us knows that where there is a great principal in any building, there are going to be great teachers and great instruction. So really hats off to all of our principals, the incredibly hard work you do, the hurdles you overcome because of so many, if you will, governmental agencies poking into your work. But thank you for what you do. Be nice to Principals Month, so 29 more days of that, okay? You see a principal at the service station or whatever, pick up their tab, or their gospel, whatever. Okay, so those are my announcements for this evening. Any other board announcements for tonight? Rudy? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought your hand was in the upright position. All right, and then we'll start with Capitol High School and Mercedes. Do you guys have announcements for tonight?
I do.
Great.
So hello, everyone. Well, Capitol recently had its mock Avid validation that went extremely well. Our visitors were actually very impressed. We also have our homecoming coming up in the next 2 weeks, and Capitol is hosting a free ACT for the seniors. Also, the Capitol Theater Department is also prepping for their play, The Actor's Nightmare. Mm-hmm.
The Actor's Nightmare. And then who are you playing for homecoming? The football team?
I actually don't have that information. I'm not.
Because I don't remember. I should have that committed to memory, and I don't. What is it? Is it who? No, we're playing. Santa Fe's playing Aztec Friday night here at Santa Fe. Somebody text me that in the next 20 minutes, please. I'm sure there's somebody from Capitol watching, because I'm just curious. Homecoming is always great if you're able. Oh, didn't we have homecoming with Deming?
I'm not sure.
I don't remember either.
Yeah.
Okay. Harvey for Santa Fe High School.
Thank you. So to start off, we had a film crew at Santa Fe High today. They were filming a show called Roswell in the student parking lot. So many students walked onto campus today bewildered by prom ticket advertisements. Santa Fe High is congratulating 2 National Merit semi-finalists, Max Lyons and Ella Nichols. And in our sports world, the boys soccer team is off to an 8-3 start, and we're 1-1 in districts. Our volleyball team is 6-4, and their district game is tonight. Our football team has 2 victories so far this year, which is definitely showing signs of improving. All right, and our girls soccer team has a winning record. Furthermore, we were our teachers received 6 exemplary records according to the state summative evaluation this year.
Terrific. Thank you, Harvey. And then for soccer fans, 11 o'clock on the new soccer field at Santa Fe High School, Capital versus Santa Fe. So crosstown rivalry, and that's this is the first time in years and years and years that they've actually been in the same division, 5A. So this game is very important to both of them. So if you can make it, it's the new field that we inaugurated earlier this year at Santa Fe High School. So, any other board or student announcements? Hearing none. Superintendent and not doctor and Ms. Sink announcements.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our legislative breakfast is October 22nd from 8 to 9 a.m. at ESC. An email has already been sent to principals to talk to their SACs and parent organizations. Also, a reminder on October 9th, the discussion at study session will be on the legislature, the legislative breakfast, and discussion on legislative items. Jeff Guppart, our besides other duties, government relations officer is already sending out invitations and receiving RSVPs. The State of the Schools luncheon on November 8th will be from 11:30 to 1 o'clock, and save the date cards are in your board books. So they look like that. Cool. So thank
Where is
you.
It?
The convention
Center?
Yes.
Okay. Swell.
That's it.
Great. Mr. Garcia.
Really quick on the legislative breakfast, how is the public school sending out invitations to our state delegation?
Mr. Gephardt, could you answer?
Board President Carrillo, members of the board, Superintendent, Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Linda Sink there. We have emailed through Dr. Garcia's email. She's emailed out to them, and Linda Siegel, our lobbyist, is following up as well.
Good, because last year I was a little disappointed that we didn't have too many legislators here, so I was just interested in whether or not they actually did receive the invitation.
Right, so that's why Linda Siegel is going to be following up, just to make sure, in case people didn't check their email addresses or emails.
And also last year, what's going to be on the agenda? Because last year it seemed to me that I didn't feel that the schools actually had some significant items on the agenda as to what we're going to pursue in the state legislature this year. Whether it be, as I brought up in the last 2 meetings, whether it be capital outlay for different school districts, and if there is a list, what are we going to move forward for to ask our state legislatures with capital outlay, and or some state initiatives, is what is the New Mexico School Board Association moving forward with?
So Secretary Garcia, our next, our study session next week, half of it is going to be allocated to identifying that agenda.
And if I may, so Mr. Garcia, so this is your first no, you were at a legislative breakfast. Oh, that happened right after you came on, didn't it? Hopefully, I'm glad that this time it's happening earlier, but on the 9th then, so I would say for you personally, but as well as like you county, of different things that are super important, make sure that we decide on the 9th what we're going to move forward as a body.
So then maybe if staff doesn't have an idea for my school district, then maybe I should go meet with each principal for my school district or my schools to decide what the importance is at that school.
But if you were going to meet with a principal, definitely tell the super first. But it's really the SACs and they're kind of critical with that, because those are also your supporters, if you will, out of the community.
Can you actually email me the different SACs and when they'll actually be meeting with each of the schools in my district?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to take the opportunity, because we have Representative Trujillo with us. Can you strong arm the northern delegation, make sure they're here? It's always a good breakfast. We never skimp. We make sure they leave full, right? Yeah, always. Okay. And now to public forum. Is there anybody here signed up for public forum this evening? Seriously? This is going to be a short meeting.
Members of the board and Deputy Superintendent Sink, there's no one signed up on that.
All righty. I know, but you picked the right one to come back. So anybody there have any thoughts you just want to share with the group? No. Did you? Oh, then if I'd like to, if the board will indulge, I'd like to hear from Representative Trujillo. And you know the rules, just don't badmouth us, be nice. Yeah. But in Santa Fe Public Schools, we're civil. We don't take our keys from our notes from Washington.
Thank you. This is a great opportunity. Board Member Garcia and Board Member Noble were at the LESC this last week when the attorneys came and talked about the sufficiency lawsuit. And so as you think about what it is that the district wants and what initiatives are moving forward, please keep in mind the no time to lose strategy that the LESC has been moving forward for a couple of years now, and the recommendations from the sufficiency lawsuit. Those are going to be really important aspects to be looking at, particularly pre-K. There's a recommendation to expand K3 plus to K5 plus. I'd like to see that be even expanded beyond that, particularly to K8, and then even to make that available in schools where they don't necessarily meet those high risk factors, and then that we don't take it away from schools once they improve their test, their proficiencies. So keep in mind those things. Yeah, I guess that's probably the most important thing to keep in mind.
So essentially, that would be extending the school day then, not just for K3, but beyond that.
25 days.
Great.
So
and then
an extra 25 days.
Great.
And the benefit of that
idea.
is obviously that the kids get an extra 25 days of instruction. And, there's report coming out very soon, time on task. And you've heard that before, Board President, from Mr. Abbey. And so 25 extra days not only gives our kids 25 extra days, it also helps our staff with 25 extra days of pay. Right? And so there's some win-win situations there. So I just encourage you to keep that in mind as you're thinking about how we're moving forward so that we're not all moving in different directions.
That's an excellent idea. And I have a question for you. It's my understanding that it might be you that it's introducing the legislation, but around gun safety, is something coming up relative to that?
Thank you for asking. Yes, I am introducing legislation. It is in the drafting process right now. It's going to be for CAP, Child Access Protection, and what it will do is provide for civil and or criminal penalties for adults who do not lock up their guns, and their children or someone under 18 gets a hold of a gun that is not safely kept and injures or kills someone.
That's outstanding.
Yeah.
So before you leave or our student board members leave, you need to meet Representative Linda Trujillo, because she's going to be your point person, because I know that I've spoken with them both about trying to help you move this forward and galvanizing support at both of our high schools as well as our mids.
Excellent, and I've got a group of young people already who are high school students that have been actually out doing demonstrations and speaking to legislators, and they're literally the wind under my wings right now. And we'll be at the committee meetings, we'll be at all of the things that we need at the Roundhouse, so we would love to add you to that. And one last thing, Board President, the other bill that I'm going to carry that is of importance to this body is a bill mandating pre-K for all. That will not mandate parents to take their children to pre-K. In other words, I'm not going to lower the school age to 4, but it will mandate schools to provide pre-K opportunity for anybody who wants to attend.
That's outstanding.
Thank you.
So that would be a huge step in moving our state forward for kids and for economic development. It's fantastic. Thank you for all your work. Wow. Okay, so next item on the agenda is consent. I don't see Amanda here from Art Smart. Is there anyone else here from Art Smart tonight? Okay, then we're going to go ahead and acknowledge them next time, but just have their thing be a part of consent. Yes, Ms. Price?
Since I wasn't here for the 17th.
Oh, of course. On the minutes, it'll only be. Were you here on the? One of us was not here. Were you here on the 17th, Rudy? Okay. Okay, let's look at the minutes and see, because the next thing we'll do is vote on the minutes, and if there's only 2 of us that can vote on the minutes, I'm sorry? Rudy wasn't, that's right, Rudy, you were sick that night. Okay, So that makes 2 of us, which is not a quorum, so we're not going to vote on the minutes tonight. So remove the minutes. Please note that we're removing the minutes for September 17. We'll have those on the next agenda for approval of minutes. Does anyone have any questions regarding or comments regarding contracts over 50?
I'll make a motion for discussion.
I'll second it.
And discussion, Mr. Garcia.
For contracts over $50,000, item number 2, which is a CES ENGI services for roughly $90,000. Aspen Community Magnet School contractors shall furnish and install new safety and security systems. What is that, Christy?
Good evening, Board President Creel, Board members, Board Secretary Garcia, Deputy Superintendent Sink. With the Phase 3 Aspen construction project, we have a general contractor on board completing the work, the primary work that the architect has drawn. But we do subcontracts or we do district contracts for some of our specialized services. And NG will do the installation of safety and security systems to our district standards as a part of this project. We just pull those services out so that we can design to our specific standards, and it's overseen by our project manager directly. So this is a part of Aspen Phase 3 construction, which is the connection between the mid-school wing and the elementary wing, and all the safety and security features required are contracted through this.
So really quick, why were the design standards that the schools have not included in the overall design process in the first place?
We have chosen for many years not to incorporate these particular features into the general bidding process because we like to have purview over the accuracy and the equipment use. And so it's not that it wasn't drawn in the overall plans, it's that it's being contracted outside of the general contractor. So we work with our architect on our design specifications, then we use our general contractor for the majority of the jobs, but we use our technology contractor for tech specific, and we use our security and communications contractor for those specific things. And the reason is that you could include those in your drawings and bid them out, and there are plenty of subcontractors that may be able to perform the work, but the accuracy is of question with the sophistication of our systems. And we had many years of flawed installation and flawed craftsmanship, and so we wanted to have quality control. And this provides us with an avenue for quality control.
So whenever there's an additional scope added to the architectural's contract, does he get an additional fee based off of us adding additional scope of work to his contract?
Board Secretary Garcia, this wouldn't be considered additional scope. It's a part of the project. It's just a separate mechanism for installing that part of the project.
So no, his contract doesn't get increased, correct?
I mean, not for this specific function. It just depends on if we add to their design requirements.
So just for board member price, so whenever you hire an architectural firm for, let's just say, $300,000, and they're to do this scope of work, A, B, C, D, and J, and then you add S to their contract, the architect has the ability to increase his contract because he's doing additional services that are included into the design of his original scope. Okay, thank you. The fourth one down is the $302,000. The Santa Fe High School contractor shall provide architectural services project consultant for demolition of administration building and related site improvements. What is that?
Board President Creel, Board Secretary Garcia, board members, Deputy Superintendent Sink. We're engaging in the Santa Fe High School construction project. It's due to commence sometime this school year. And we have multiple aspects of the project going on, but one aspect involves the civil design work and the site design work to improve our parking, paving, drainage, demolish the existing student services center, and provide a building pad for the new construction. And these design services are to advance that work. This is a part of the Santa Fe High School Master Plan presented to the Board of Education, approved by the Board of Education, and this is the first phase of that work and the architectural work required to do so.
So this is the building that ROTC's in right now, correct?
Board President, Board Secretary, Board members, this is Student Services is the administrative building. And you might recall when we brought the master plan to the board, essentially we're reworking the corner of the campus by the arch. It's roughly the southwest corner of the campus. And part of that is taking down that Student Services building and reorientating not just the main entry, but bringing security closure to the corner of the campus, because right now you go through an open arch and a separate security structure and a separate student services building where administration is. So this is not our OTC. This is the main administrative area, which was the prioritized part for phase 1 of that project.
So is this contract actually for just the design demolition services, or is this actually to take down the building? All three of them?
Board President Creel, Board Secretary, Board members, this is to design the site. So the ingress and egress, so parking, the paving associated with it changes to the ingress and egress, the civil work associated with bringing that area of the campus to grade, the utilities associated with reworking the infrastructure that will be required to feed the new building and connect the new building to the old buildings, as well as a design for a demolition contractor to demolish the student services building. So it's multiple things. We're also having to work on relocation of our data center, our tech data security center on campus. And so this is to design all of those aspects of the project.
And then once the building is demolished, the district does have money to construct the new addition construction.
Through the facility master plan and the 2017 general obligation bond, we secured funds and prioritized them for phase 1 of the project. And so that is what we're looking at completing within this scope.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. President.
All right, I just have one comment that's on item 3. Starting the tennis courts over there, I just think it's fantastic, and I'm going to let Maureen take it from there. This is your go bond money at work, so we don't throw good money after bad year after year repairing old courts. Ms. Cashman.
Oh, I'll speak to that after we approve it.
After you approve consent. No? Okay. It's item 3. And because there's no, Ms. Sink, is there the need tonight to accept the funds from ArtSmart tonight, or can we do that on the 16th?
We can do it on the 16th.
We're doing it on the 16th. Gang, can we take that off because something must have happened and they weren't able to come?
That's fine.
Great. So basically consent then is just the contracts for tonight, and we had a motion from Ms. Cashman, a second. You have a second? Great. Motion was Mr. Garcia, second was Ms. Cashman. We're going to do a roll call on this. Mrs. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Garcia?
Yes.
Ms. Cashman?
Yes.
President Carrillo votes yes. And consent passed. Ms. Cashman?
I would like to thank the board and the community for the approving the funds to move ahead with the 9 tennis courts at Santa Fe High School. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
And you do realize, of course, that we cannot call them the Cashman courts until such time as you, well, in your 90s. It's going to be a while before we can call them the Cashman courts, okay? You're going to be around for a while. All right. Great. That's going to be, all of this work being done at Santa Fe High is pretty fantastic. So if you ever have it, for some free time on a Wednesday when we have the CRC meeting to understand the scope of what's going on, it's very, very exciting. Next item on the agenda, board update follow-up. Board members, do you have any updates to give to the group? Nope.
Yes, I do.
Oh, great.
In regards to what I just talked about earlier, a capital outlay request, I know the superintendent submitted there's roughly around 13 projects of capital outlay projects that we had, and there's about 6 or 7 of them that actually expire now in June of 19. I would just like to see some sort of a plan, time frame, as into when those projects are going to get completed. And I know she had actually explained that it would be on a quarterly basis. The only concern that I have about that, if we start backwards from June of 19, it takes a project anywhere from 30 to 60 days to get on the ground. It takes another 60 to 90 days to get the project constructed. We're already in June. So I just want to make sure that we're not losing any of that capped outlay dollars. And those projects range anywhere from a $35,000 for a fence at Sweeney Elementary School. I think there was another $20,000 for a PA system at Romita's Thomas. And if we don't need a PA system at Romita's Thomas, then we need to get our state legislatures to reauthorize that money to something else that can be used within that school. So those are some of the ideas, plans I have for the legislative breakfast. So once again, if we're not going to use those dollars, if we can actually get them reauthorized and let our state legislators know they need reauthorization.
And if the superintendent could follow up with that on the 16th, fantastic. And since you mentioned PA systems, Christy, have you noticed the PA system that Ivan had? You don't come to football as much as you used to. I know. Her son Ethan is now playing in college. But sometime maybe notice it. It's horrible, especially when it comes to music. Wouldn't have even thought of that had Rudy not mentioned PA. Okay, so next item is superintendent update and follow-up.
I have nothing at this time.
Nothing works. And so given that we are moving item 10B before the presentation, the next item on the agenda then is, and this is for action, it's 10B. It's the resolution 2018-19-6, district authorizing the amended and restated ground lease of a portion of the Alameda Middle School campus with NDI, which is, of course, the National Dance Institute. Ms. Singh.
Yes, the existing land lease was executed in 2002 and calls for two 50-year lease terms at $1 a year. The land lease was not approved by the State Board of Finance. Our attorney, Charlotte Hetherington, is preparing the State Board of Finance packet documents and will need the attached amendment for their requirements. Our recommendation is approval.
Board?
Questions? Why did the State Board of Finance didn't approve our first contract lease amendment or proposal?
Board President Creo, Board Secretary Garcia, board members, Deputy Superintendent Sink. The lease just simply didn't go through the process at that time. It was an oversight over 15 years ago, and when it was caught and observed by NDI, they came to us and we agreed to jointly pursue this process to go back through the State Board of Finance and follow the process. So Charlotte is here this evening, as well as staff from NDI. If you have any questions, but this predates my tenure really. It was simply an oversight.
Sure, really quick, if you could explain to us why the State Board of Finance, or why we never went in front of the State Board of Finance. So just so you're in the audience, so the State Board of Finance is made up of the state auditor, the state treasurer, the governor, the lieutenant governor. Anytime the government, whether it's a public school, a local school district, and sometimes municipality, anytime they do long-term leases with government-owned facility or property, public property, they have to go in front of the State Board of Finance for approval.
To answer your question, Board President Carrillo and Board Secretary Mr. Garcia and other board members, there's no record in either the school district's files or in the NDI files of why it wasn't sent to the Board of Finance for approval. State law requires that all leases that are greater than 5 years or for a larger amount than $25,000 obtain approval from the State Board of Finance in order for them to be effective. And so it's unfortunate that it didn't happen when it should have, but we are very glad that the parties did discover that this omission had been created and got together in order to figure out the proper steps to correct the problem and to make sure that going forward everything is properly reviewed and approved. And that's our goal today. Part of that process is to obtain the board's approval for what we will be presenting in, it's in a draft form now because the State Board of Finance's staff goes through all of the documents that are presented to it really with a fine-tooth comb. and frequently asks that amendments and changes be made to it. So we're not asking the board in tonight's resolution to approve a final form of what we're calling the amended and restated lease. What we're asking you to do tonight in this resolution is to approve it substantially as it looks today, but to authorize the administration as necessary to negotiate any changes that the State Board of Finance may require for its approval. We think that there will not be very many, but it is not unusual for particular members on the State Board of Finance to want certain types of language changes. And so you can't really predict going into the process really what kind of sausage you're going to come out looking like. And so this is a conceptual, really, a resolution with conceptual approval that we're asking you to give tonight.
So with your professional opinion, do we have an invalid lease with NDI right now?
No, you do not.
So you stated that we're actually bringing this forward as a resolution, but what I have in my packet is an actual copy of the lease. So
what you,
I don't know whether we have a resolution or we actually have a lease, because there's no resolution inside of our packet.
You have a resolution.
To the very end.
And you have a form of lease called an amended and restated lease, but it is not in its final format because the State Board of Finance may require additional changes. And so you'll notice in the resolution itself, there's a provision in paragraph 3 that says that you are authorizing the superintendent or her designee to execute on its behalf the amended and restated ground lease. That is an action that has to be done before we can present it to the Board of Finance. They will not look at an unsigned lease. I think based on bad experiences that they have had in the past, not with this school district or really with any school district, but with some other public bodies where they would present an unsigned lease to the board. The board would approve it, and then lo and behold, after the state board's approval, there would then be further changes to the lease. And what they want to do is make sure that at least the form that's presented to it has been reviewed and agreed to and executed by the parties before it's presented. So then the State Board of Finance knows that any changes it makes will be the changes that are reflected in the final lease that it approves.
On that, so it's safe to assume this is going to come back to us for a signed lease for approval?
Well, it does not have to. If you want that to be a condition of this resolution.
Now, we can raise the cost of the lease, can't we? Just kidding, just kidding over there.
So I still have several questions, I'm sorry, but
sure.
Just in regards to, in here it actually calls for another paragraph on the resolution, according to attachment A. Let's see here, let me find
Attachment A is the plat of survey.
So we don't have a Plateau Survey inside of our package. So Kirsty, can you tell me what portion of Old Alameda School where this is located? I know where the dance barns are, but is it that entire northwestern portion of the property?
I think that you don't have, even as a final page on the amended and restated lease, a plat.
No, we don't.
No. Okay. Well, I can provide you with a copy of it, but to answer your question, and maybe I can sort of show it to you this way. This is La Madera Street, and
can you bring that up here, please?
Sure.
So we can see it. I can't see that far. I can't see the paper in front of me. Here, so you can use
a Toyota Prius outside, it's blue, lights are on, north side of the building, license plate, I don't know what that says, something GKY 792. If you got a Prius, go turn your lights off.
A couple other questions I have, just skimming through this lease because I just got my packet today. It is regarding, it looks like they've spent $4.9 million on improvements on that property, which is great. The lessor and lessee also intend that the dance barns be available for use by other performing groups and art in titles when not used by the district students to expand access to the arts and to promote the advancement of art programs in the district's public schools. Does the district know what other performing arts have been allowed to utilize that other than NDI? Do we know?
Well, the buildings are actually owned by NDI. NDI leased the land. And I can't answer for that question for the district, but I can tell you based on my conversations with the NDI folk who are here tonight, that NDI not only provides classes to the Santa Fe School District students, but it also provides classes in its buildings for other school communities in the area, such as Pewaukee and maybe Espanola. I think Ms. Wolf, Maria Wolf, is here, and she can give you further information if you would like.
I guess one of the questions I have, if I had a local nonprofit organization, dance group, am I allowed to utilize those buildings?
The answer to that question is that provided that we are not using those buildings, we do make them available. Oh, by the way, my name is Maria Wolf. I'm the Director of Business and Administration for a National Dance Institute of New Mexico. And we do provide use of that space. New Mexico School for the Arts uses that space as well. We have had choreographers and performance artists from across the country who have come and conducted demonstrations in that building that are open to the public, to students within our community. So yes, we do make that facility available. We have our core hours where we're working. We don't always use every studio, so if we have a studio that's available, we do make that available to the public.
And is every single school, every single child in the district allowed to go to NDI?
We have programs that are conducted in schools, in the public schools, so we don't necessarily have a program in every single school, and that's typically at the school's discretion. However, all students are allowed to come to the dance barns. Yes, we have after-school programs, and they're open to anyone.
To expand on that, Mr. Garcia, we could, but we'd have to pay for it. And right now, we don't have the additional funding in that area. And I know that Russell Baker and I have talked about that. Well, we talk about it at least every year at the gala, but usually throughout the year, because we recognize the value that NDI brings to our kids when you get those little bodies moving around and you get them having fun and, you know, experiencing joy at school. So it's just a question of money on our side.
So if I was to send my kid there, what would the cost be for my child to go there?
The programs in our after-school program are on a sliding scale tuition, so it's all based on income. And that ranges depending on the length of the program. For a full-year program, it might be $30 up to $360 or so for a school year of about 30 weeks of a class. But it's all on a sliding scale. And even that does not cover the full cost of the program. So we have, all of our programs have subsidies that go behind them through private donations and fundraising.
I guess I'm just, the reason why I'm asking this question is because that's a public piece of property. It's just like a public piece of property such as BLM property. If you actually have BLM property, the only thing you can construct on BLM property is a clinic, park, a library, something that's open to the general public. So if we have government-owned property, the school property, and we have a nonprofit that does an excellent job for the students in this community and raises tremendous amounts of monies for this for your organization, I just want to make sure that it's open up to the entire public within Santa Fe Public Schools.
The answer to that is yes.
So back to President Carrillo's.
I'm sorry, on the point of use, is that okay, Mr. Garcia? My understanding is, and Ms. Hetherington, maybe you can answer this, the rules don't apply to us the way they apply to other governmental agencies. Am I incorrect in that?
Well, the rule that applies to the school district as well as every other public state entity, excuse me, is that you cannot donate anything of value to a private party. There has to be some form of consideration that is exchanged, and that consideration can be provided in a number of ways. So in 2002, when this lease was originally negotiated, the idea that the parties had at that time was that the Santa Fe Public Schools would provide a piece of vacant land, and on that, the NDI would construct these dance barns, and that would add value to the property itself. But it also, because of the existence of those facilities, it would provide a location where dance instruction and dance programs could be provided to Santa Fe Public School students. And it's that combination of the improvements themselves plus the services that NDI is providing that make up that consideration that addresses the concerns in what's called the anti-donation clause in the New Mexico Constitution. That is also one of the things that the Board of Finance is very concerned and will look closely at. One of the things that is not finalized yet is the list of activities and the costs that are, the value of those costs associated with each of the activities that the NDI provides to school students in both this district and in other public school districts that use those facilities. We will need to provide to the Board of Finance a listing of the value of the services that are provided that are related to each of the programs that the NDI provides, so that it's clear to everyone, both in this venue as well as in the State Board of Finance, that nobody's getting a sweetheart deal, nobody's getting an arrangement where NDI gets to profit from the fact that it is not paying a ground lease rent for the place where its buildings have been built. And so that's really what we're looking at, is the ground lease and the relationship between the parties based on the improvements that have been built on that ground.
So it's nothing against NDI whatsoever. It's just the concern that I have with school property. And this lease is for 100 years. Nobody in this room is going to be here 100 years from now. And I don't want people to think in 25 years, 30 years, and say, who actually created this lease for 100 years? And so whenever you talk about the services that NDI is doing for the public schools in order to get this $1 a year rent per se, who's monitoring whether or not, or auditing that the services that we don't even have yet in this packet, as into the services that NDI is providing to the schools in order for this $1 a year rent? Who's monitoring that?
I think that currently, and Ms. Wolf can speak to it more particularly, but currently there is an annual review of the services that are being provided to see if they are services that fit the populations in the various schools, as well as what's being provided at the dance barns. And that will be one of the requirements of the State Board of Finance. They will want to make sure that there is an annual review of the level of services that are being provided and the nature of services that are being provided, to make sure that there is a way, as you say, of monitoring both the level of services and the quality of services.
So once again, who from the schools is going to do that? I just had a little bit of concerns, because back in 2002 when this got created, just probably a forewarning, because the State Board of Finance is going to want to make sure that we're not giving you the rent for $1, because we need to make sure that the services rendered, whatever you're doing for the students, is in a proper exchange, because this is not fair market value right now. And so whenever you go in front of the Florida Board of Finance right now, what's fair market value rent? Once again, nothing to do with NDI. I'm just concerned about the school's property.
Ms. Sink has the answer to that question, and we can move on maybe.
Mr. President. Sorry. Mr. President, Board Member Garcia, I have a couple of answers for that, but I would like Ms. Wolf from NDI to answer her side of it, and then we'll answer our side.
We do an analysis every year of the services that we provide, and I know in this lease, this predated my time at NDI as well. I have provided to Ms. Hetherington a copy of the services agreement that we have attached to a lease we have with Bernalillo County for the Highland Theater, and we would like to model, and that did go to the State Board of Finance. We would like to model what is included as in the services agreement to be very similar to that, and then have someone at the school district who would be the individual who would then do the annual review with us, or a quarterly review, whatever it needs to be. Because we do track all of our programs. We track our student population. We track how many students take how many classes. We have numbers that track all of that. So this is something that we are happy to provide to the school district. And at this point in time, even just I did an analysis of what would these services cost, just the bare cost of instructors, and the appraisal for what the rent should be for the property indicated that $41,500 a year would be an appropriate rent, and the services provided just in a small segment of our services, and this was adjusted for students that might be just Santa Fe Public Schools students. There might be more that are in the district but are homeschooled. I wasn't sure how to account for that. That was well over $200,000 just for the wages, and did not include any other costs, no overhead, no utilities, nothing like that. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. And again, Board Member Garcia, at the school sites, there's about 15 schools, elementaries that are involved in this program. And so we do, if you will, monitor in that they're in our schools an hour a week. And the kids are then, out of the 4th grade, are working with this NDI. At the end of the year, actually quite a few hours are put into the dance recitals or programs. And there's a number of programs toward the end of the year. However, just recently, Dr. Garcia and I have been looking into it more specifically to make sure even we have more information on it as well. So we've done some surveys out to the schools, and I've also asked our general counsel to help me relook at contracts or MOUs to just make sure that we tighten up too and are doing the right thing. I'll also meet with Ms. Wolf to find out more details from her and be the point person for now.
Really quick, thank you. Those kids that actually go to after-school programs are still paying, right?
It depends on the program. We do have our programs, the SWAT and the Celebration, the Super Wonderful Advanced Team and our Celebration teams. Those students pay absolutely nothing for the advanced training that they're receiving. It is the technique classes that are conducted in our Dance Barns program, which is the after-school technique program. They pay, but it's on definitely an adjusted sliding scale, and we've never turned anyone away because they could not pay.
Thank you.
Any additional questions with regards to the resolution for NDI?
Just really quick, how did you guys negotiate a 50-year lease with an additional 50 years added to that? Why not 40? Why not 30? Why 50? And why not just go for their full 100 right away?
That's a very good question, and the answer is that is the language that was in the original lease. And so we don't know how that exact number came to be 50 years for an initial term and 50 years for a second term, other than the fact that it's my understanding, based on other sort of arts programs that I've worked with, that it is important to donors to know that if they are going to donate a large sum of money for a program, they want to make sure that that program is going to be allowed to exist for an extended period of time in order to make sure that their donation is worth something. The value of it extends for a period of time. And that's the only speculation I have as to why those two numbers came into being. I think that that is going to be a question, again, that the State Board of Finance is going to want to know, because it is a very long period of time. The language in the amended and restated lease says that this lease has a term of, the initial lease term is not 50 years. They've already used up 16 years of that 50-year period. So if you look at paragraph Article 2, it indicates in A that the term will be 35 years from the date of approval of all governmental agencies, and that the renewal term will be for 50 years, and simply because that 50 years is a carryover from the original lease. And if it is approved that way by the Board of Finance, then that is what it will be. If they say you've got to have a shorter term, then we will go back and negotiate a shorter term.
Thank you. So maybe the summary is wrong where it said it calls for two 50-year lease terms. It should say 35 and then additional 50 renewal. A couple of comments. There's nothing against NDI. The program I hear is excellent. Maybe I need to go visit NDI. I'm just thinking 10, 25 years ahead of where we're going to be out with our properties, because as the board president and board member Noble brought to the meeting last month is regarding some possibly sort of affordable housing. So the district is going to do some sort of evaluation of our properties that we have, and if this is allowed for some of our properties that we currently have, I just want to make sure in the next 50 years, when I'm, how old will I be? I won't be here, I'll be 110, but just to make sure that what we can do with the district's properties based on what we've done with NDI. Those are the only comments I have. Thank you.
Okay, and if I can just respond to that, Mr. Garcia, in Article 18, paragraph C, there is an early termination clause that essentially says that the lease can be terminated.
I'm sorry, where are you at?
It's on page 19, and it is in Article 18, paragraph C, early termination of lease for governmental purposes. This is a new provision, and it says, notwithstanding the foregoing having to do with how a lease can be terminated due to defaults or other reasons, this provision gives the district the right to terminate the lease for other uses if at some point in the future, before the natural term of the lease ends, it's determined that it is necessary to use that property for some other reason. And so it gives, it requires the lessor, which is the school district, to give not less than 1 year prior to termination notice to NDI. And then in that event, Articles 12 and Articles 20 will be triggered. And those two articles have to do both with how the option to purchase will or will not be used, and how, because the option to purchase allows the school district to purchase the buildings as well as the NDI to purchase the land if certain things happen. And Article 20 is the provision that relates to condemnation. And there's a process in the condemnation provisions, and there's a process in Article 20 for mediation and arbitration of disputes. So if the parties couldn't agree under the provisions for early termination about how the costs and benefits would be allocated at that time, Article 20 provides that we will have either a mediation or an arbitration to decide.
What I'd like to do, if it pleases the board, is I'd like this to be brought back to us. Okay, so we can direct the superintendent when the lease is completely worked out and DFA approves it. I'd like us all to be given a copy of the lease at least 1 week prior to the meeting, so we can have a look at it, and it's not just independently done. Because my sense is in 2002, the reason we're in this situation is probably the board wasn't even really involved. They just, and I don't know, none of us know. Anybody here on the board in 2002? No. So what I'd like to do is move on and then have a copy of whatever the lease, with new language that DFA comes up with, have it brought back to us, and then we'll approve the lease at another time.
Well, Board President Carrillo, there is one.
We can approve the resolution tonight.
We need to have the resolution along with the draft of the lease.
Right.
Or approved tonight.
Of course.
Or, okay, or board minutes.
Done. Motion to approve?
Are you making the motion?
I just made a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
And the further discussion, I believe, can be when the lease, if the lease is brought back to us. So is there any further discussion at this time? The only thing that I would say is, sometimes if something's $1 in a lease, like the city library that we lease right over there, we have to, it's not about money, it's about doing something great for the community, okay? We've got Lafarge Library open, it's open for a reason, because we value libraries and books and kids and reading. It's not about the dollar. It's same thing here, the value you add to our district. So that having been said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
I'm opposed just because this is totally unclear to me of how it's working, and she just explained it, actually added a item received at least early termination. So it's nothing against NDI. It's just how this came forward to this existing board and the unanswered questions that I have, and as us to moving forward with this lease for 35 years and additional 50 years. And just another question, if I have a nonprofit that comes forward and wants to use part of CAPTCHA, so we can actually do this to a nonprofit, get some state money, grant money, build some facilities, and then we can lease it out. So I'm just a little confused, nothing against NDI, and just a little confused on this lease, so I vote against it.
Okay.
Against it.
Again, so 3-1. What I'd like to have happen as well, if you could, Ms. Singh, make sure somehow that all of us have our packets by the Friday before the meeting, because it is incomprehensible to me that we would be giving Rudy a lease at an idea of this magnitude, and he gets it the evening of. So if we can just make sure that in the future, maybe we have to sign for them, maybe it's a read receipt on an email, whatever it is, so that we know we have what we need to move forward on any given night. Is that okay, Mr. Garcia? Yes. Great. Ms. Cashman.
But I would caution us as board members, we know those packets come out to us on Friday evening. So I usually, if I don't have what I need on Friday evening, I send an email to our secretary. So it's also up to us to make sure we have what we need for the meeting.
I stopped this morning for my packet at 10 o'clock, and the place told me that my packet was not ready because we don't have the ETN inside of the packet.
All right. So either way, we'll just make sure and we'll do read receipts for the board. Ms. Hetherington, thank you very much. Ms. Wolf, thank you very much. And the work you guys do is just phenomenal. Can't wait till the next performances. Thanks. The joy you bring to the district. Thank you so much. So backing up. Yeah. So backing up, we are going to do now the presentation on the Local Election Act Frequently Asked Questions. This is, you know what I'm hoping on this one? I'm hoping that maybe different boards around the state are watching, because they probably have the very same questions, but they probably do not have the resources to be able to have the kind of presentation that we're being given tonight. And then along the way, I'm just curious for our student board members, have either one of you been in the NDI program or have friends that are?
I actually do have a couple of friends, and they really enjoy it, but no, I haven't.
Okay. No, I don't. Just curious. All right.
I had two grandsons. They loved it.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
It's nothing but joy and love on that stage. 500 kids. All right. So item 9 then, presentation, Ms. Singh.
Yes. Mr. President, board members, tonight we have our General Counsel, Lisa Sullivan, presenting along with our Bond Counsel, Mr. Art Melendres. Thank you.
Board President Carrillo, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Sink. Art Melendres and I created, with the help of Jeff Gephardt and Dr. Tom Ryan, this slide presentation that we have titled Q&A. I know the agenda says FAQ. I'm going.
As long as it's done PDQ.
I'm going to try to succinctly go through the slides, and Mr. Melendres will be here to answer more in-depth questions. I would ask that you hold your questions until the end of a section, because we tried to answer every possible question, and so your questions might be addressed in a subsequent slide. On slide 2, we summarize the effects of House Bill 98 as having shifted the month of regular elections from February to November for school districts, and this is significant for the reasons stated in subsequent slides. The next election that was on the district's plate was the ETN, and so the bulk of this presentation will be devoted to that because of the timing issue. Prior to House Bill 98, the election was supposed to be conducted in February 2019 as a regular election. However, if we were to conduct ETN as a regular election, we would have to wait until November of 2019. Doing so would create a year-long funding gap because of the dates for tax certifications, which are listed on slide 4 in bullet points. And with your permission, I'll proceed to another slide.
Yes, but with your permission, we have 2 new student board members. Do you guys know what ETN is? It's the Education Technology Note. Okay, so that's money, it's a separate bond item, right, that we go to the, well, now we go to the voters. The very first time the board took action on its own, and it allows us to fund technology and ancillary services related to technology. So all the new stuff that you have in the school, all of the PON and all, which is the conduit, and all of the tablets and everything, all of that's funded with ETN. It's updated with ETN. So that's what we're talking about right here. In the election, this whole election thing screwed up the timing for ETN, and that's why we're here discussing this now. Okay.
And for your information, President Carrillo, members of the board, I believe Dr. Ryan contributed a slide that lists, itemized the types of equipment and the other items that we purchased through ETN funding. On slide 4, again, we have bullet points that itemize the timing of this tax certification process that lead to the funding gap because House Bill 98 didn't address those issues. The amount of the funding gap would be approximately $11 million. So we would, for a year, lack for the Santa Fe Public Schools about $9.68 million, and the charter schools would lack for the same period of time about $1.32 million. On slide 6, the types of services and equipment that we wouldn't be able to cover during that funding gap are itemized.
You want me to go first?
With your permission, I'll skip to the next slide unless you want Dr. Ryan to read each bullet point.
And letter. Yeah, next slide's fine.
On slide 7, we talk about a way to avoid the funding gap, which is through a special election that is provided for in the Local Election Act that House Bill 98 put into place. On slide 8, the special election may be conducted technically any time from January 15th through the end of June. However, again, because of the tax certification process and also to try to create as little change as possible in the minds of voters, we would aim to, or we would suggest that we aim to reproduce the time frame to which Santa Fe public school voters are accustomed. And that would mean holding the ETN special election on the first Tuesday of February or March of 2019. On slide 9, we have bullet points about, again, the times that the tax certification process implicates. On slide 10, if the board chooses to proceed with a special election in February of 2019, then the board would be asked to approve an election proclamation and resolution at either the next board meeting or the subsequent one. Then, if we have a February special election, the county clerk will mail out ballots on January 8th. On slide 11, there are the dates listed if you choose to conduct a March 2019 special election. On slide 12, we wanted to let you know that other school districts are doing the same. The school districts represented by Mr. Melendres that are choosing to proceed with a special election include Roswell, Ruidoso, and APS. The cost of the special election to Santa Fe Public Schools will be approximately $180,000. This is assuming that there isn't a legislative fix that has been discussed in some circles. That would be a one-time fix. In contrast, a regular election costs the district approximately $50,000. On slide 15, we address the fact that we can pass along a portion of the election costs, whether regular or special, to charter schools. However, it will be pro rata based on MEM enrollment in the charter schools compared to the public schools enrollment. On slide 16, we talk about how the Education Technology Act does allow the board to authorize the issuance of ETN without conducting an election. In Mr. Melendres' experience, Farmington, Gadsden, Carlsbad, and Cimarron authorize the issuance of education technology notes without going through the election process. On slide 18, if the board so chose to adopt a resolution to issue the ETN, then you could do that at any point at a regular board meeting up until or frankly at a special meeting as well, up to the June 11th, 2019 meeting. This would be the same deadline as if there had been an election for adoption of the resolution. On slide 19, we talk about when ETN proceeds are available to the district. In the case of a successful special election, it would be about 60 days afterwards. In the case of board resolution without an election, it would be about 60 days afterwards, as long as both of these actions were completed prior to June 30th, again, because of the tax certification deadlines. In the case of a successful regular election in November, because of the Tax Administration Act, you'd have to wait about a year to get those proceeds. On slide 20, we address whether the board could use a hybrid approach. And that would involve both proceeding with a November regular election and also adopting a resolution to issue notes without an election to bridge the gap. You can do this, and this would help ensure there isn't a lapse in services. I think the tricky part would be you might be issuing a resolution that assumes there would be a successful November election. So some encumbrances might be made or some items budgeted, and we wouldn't necessarily know the course after November. At this point, I'd like to open it up for discussions and more possible questions about the ETN election, and turn over the mic to Mr. Melendres.
I'll go ahead and start page 8.
Page what?
8. Yeah, let's go through. Yeah, let's do what we did the other night. It's a great idea. Does anybody have anything before page 8? Ms. Cashman, we're just going to, so all of us can be on the same page, like if we have the same questions. Anyone have any questions on pages 1 through 7? All right, Ms. Cashman.
A question.
Well, first, Ms. What page?
4.
All right.
On last item for the county would impose a tax in December 2020. Could you explain that really quick?
Mr. President, Board Secretary, Deputy Superintendent Sink, yes. The process is as follows. For a governmental entity which wants a tax imposed, the governmental entity, and I'll be specific here, it would be the Santa Fe Public Schools, must submit the tax rate that is to be imposed to the Public Education Department not later than August 15th of the year in which the tax is to be imposed. PED then submits the tax rate to the Department of Finance and Administration, who does a double check. DFA is charged with submitting the order, it's called, but the order to the county commission to impose the tax levy or tax rate, and the county commission then approves that, sends it to the treasurer and the state assessor, and then a tax bill is prepared, and the tax bill reflects that levy for Santa Fe schools, for the city of Santa Fe, for any other governmental entity within the jurisdiction that wants taxes imposed and collected.
Thank you. I was just confused. It says the county would impose the tax, so you meant actually the tax rate / mill levy, which they do on a regular basis twice a year.
Yes.
Right, thank you. And then on page 5, so basically we have in there that the $9.6 million funding gap, has anybody talked to the state in regards to how we're going to deal with this funding gap, or talk to PED? Because we have to do something about it. We're just not going to sit there with $9 million saying, well, let's just not operate our schools because we don't have the $9 million because of what happened on this on the House bill. So has anybody talked to the state? Is the state going to?
Mr. President, Secretary, Deputy Superintendent, there have been ongoing conversations with the sponsor of House Bill 98. That ongoing conversation predates the passage of the bill itself, at which time I know that Joe Guillen, Art Melendres, and others made it clear to Representative Bandy and Senator Ivy Soto that there needed to be a synchronization between House Bill 98 and the tax code. I think they're very well aware of that. In the rush of closing the legislative session, it didn't get done. So the follow-up is that Senator Ivy Soto and Representative Bandy appeared before the Legislative Finance Committee about a month and a half ago, at which time they actually committed to the Chair Lundstrom that they would expeditiously make some amendments and make their very best effort to get those approved in January, February of 2019. I have my fingers crossed, and that may provide some relief to every school district. I also have been in the legislative session for a number of years, so I remain a smidgen cynical about how fast that can get done.
I hope your fingers are very, very powerful. So that actually is taking care of, the state of New Mexico and the state legislators are taking care of that, so that's out of our control. So they're hopefully going to work that out, correct? Because every school district is going to be in the same situation.
Yes, sir. All school districts are impacted just like Santa Fe.
So really quick, I have next page 7.
Yeah, but to further that, that's why we're having the discussion on the later pages, is because we can make sure there's not a funding gap by taking action on our own.
So just on page 7, can I go to 7?
Yeah, you go to 7 and then Ms. Cashman.
Okay, so by page 7, basically, we can have a special election, and I understand how the costs work, the estimated cost. So would every single voter in Santa Fe County get a ballot?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Mr. President, Secretary, yes.
So that's a very good point. No, because that's a very good point that Board Member Vice President Cashman, anybody that's in the Santa Fe Public School District, not Edgewood, not Powake, in the Santa Fe School District area.
Santa Fe School District, yes.
Thank you. And then also in regards to, this is just kind of information, is the state of Utah actually this November is going to do their first mail-out ballot to the entire state. So it'll be interesting to see how and who votes and doesn't vote. So that's just kind of informational piece.
Also on 7, Ms. Cashman.
Can you, since this is something new for me, my whole lifetime, mail-in ballots, and I'm sure there are many other people, can you explain the mail-in ballot? My initial impression was, well, somebody's going to have to notarize those ballots. Now, I've since talked with people and say, no, that's not what happens. But can you explain how that mail-in ballot works?
I can, Mr. President, Secretary, Board Member Cashman. So the process is that the school board adopts an election proclamation, and within that election proclamation, they will provide the form of the ballot that will be mailed to qualified electors within the Santa Fe schools. The county clerk is responsible for mailing that ballot in a sealed envelope, postmarked. The recipient opens it, and it is going to be virtually identical to the ballot that you receive when you go to the voting machines. And they, depending on where you live and what candidates you get, districts and all that, you get a ballot. And that ballot is handed to you, you mark it, and it's fed back into the machine. In this case, the mail ballot will be mailed to you at your home address, the proper address, and the elector will fill out the ballot prescribed by the board, put it in another sealed envelope which is provided, and mail it back to the county clerk. The county clerk, and it does not have to be notarized, the county clerk will collect all the ballots as they come in, but not later than the final election day at 7 p.m., and then those ballots will be counted.
I have a follow-up question to that, and it might even be the same. So other than having language maybe at the bottom of the ballot that says, I attest under penalty of perjury that I am the person that this was sent to, stuff like that, what's to ensure that somebody like one person in a household doesn't fill out all of the ballots if there are 4 ballots sent to that household?
Mr. President, this is a democracy, and
people cheat when they want to.
This is a process that is based on the integrity of the citizen, but there is, to my knowledge, no way to prevent one person in the home from filling out 4 ballots if they are there and returning them.
I have a question. When people fill out, this is on the same topic, is that okay, Maureen? When people sign up to register to vote and signatures are verified, sometimes signatures are disqualified because one signature may not match another signature. Is that a way, if there's any suspected wrongdoing, that, frankly, I think it's going to be, 66% to 33% as it's been all along. There's just going to be more people voting. But are there mechanisms by which, if there was a sense that a household or a dozen,
that someone forged the signature? So when you get the ballot, you are to sign it and put it in the sealed envelope and return it. Now, some people you can't even read the signature from some people that go like that, but that is the responsibility of the county clerk to match the signatures that they have against the signature on the ballot that comes back. And it's not probably perfect, but
and how many voters are we expecting? I think we were given that number 2 weeks ago, and I don't have it in front of me.
I think, by memory, my recollection is there are 50,000 registered qualified voters in higher.
In the school district? All right. So just roughly, 55, 60, that's cool. Ms. Cashman?
So just a couple of questions. So if, okay, you're going to answer that question first?
Yes.
Was it not answered?
She's going to give you the right number of voters.
President Carrillo, members of the board, and Vice President Cashman, based on the projected cost for the special elections, the mail-in ballot cost was estimated to be $167,000, which reflects $2 per registered voter within the district geographical boundaries. So about 88,000 plus registered voters.
Doesn't that seem kind of high?
No,
because if I've lived here a long time. I don't think registered voters within the district and part of our schools are obviously in the county.
President Carrillo, I believe the number of registered voters in Santa Fe County is either 95 or 98,000 as of August of 2018.
Thank you.
So let me just continue with the mail-in ballot. If I am not here, how do I go ahead? If I'm not physically here, how do I get an absentee ballot? And also, how would I notify the county clerk if a ballot has been sent to a mailbox and I still haven't got my ballot? How do I take care of those issues?
So in the election proclamation that you would adopt for a special election, there would be a provision for absentee voting, just as there is on election day at the ballot machine or voting machine. And so if you didn't get a ballot or you were going to be unable to sign it because you were out of state, you could go to the county clerk, Vice President, and say, I want my ballot, I want to vote as an absentee, and the clerk is required to provide you with a ballot, and you can sign it then or mail it in later, and they count that as an absentee ballot, which would go with all the other ballots that are returned.
Let me just follow up, because this has been a problem in the county. Our mailboxes have been broken into, so when we publish this and we put an article in the newspaper, and there'll be a certain date when you would expect to receive your ballot in your mailbox, but how will the county clerk also have paper ballots in case my mailbox has been broken into, that I can go down and get a ballot or call them or something?
Vice President, Mr. President, the answer is yes. And it's the same process essentially as an absentee ballot being provided to you.
Thank you.
So on page 8, the only thing that I have is I would prefer February to March, sooner rather than later. It also is in keeping with, on page 8, I would prefer February to March because it's in keeping with when people are typically expecting to vote on school-related issues. Anybody else for page 8? Page 9, anybody for page 9? Going once? No, page 9. Page 10, so 10, it looks like 10 and 11. 10 is for February, 11 is for March, the dates.
Yes.
Okay. And then what's interesting is the idea of having, and thank you very much for including those districts that are doing it one way or another. We adopted this entire thing with no election. The legislature gave us the right to do so. The reason we did it, Lorraine and I were the only ones, Ms. Price and I were the only ones here then. We did it, well, one, we needed to do it. We needed to get started on the program, and we knew that in subsequent years we'd be going to the voters. And I'll never forget what Ms. Price said, if someone's going to take money from my pocket, I want them to ask me first. I paraphrased what you said. Okay. So, but this is a time where I would personally, obviously the board will discuss this, I would support not having an election this time and then getting into the cycle the following November. That's me personally. It's like February or not at all. So that's the comment I have on that. And on 13, it's just the money. $180,000 doesn't include any public relations that the district might need to do. Is that correct? And that's like a yes or no. Is that,
say that one more time.
On 13,
yes.
The cost of $180,000, and I'm not counting on a legislative fix because they'd have to do that fix pretty darn quick. That's just the cost of the election, nothing that the district incurs relative to PR and advertising.
Correct.
President Carrillo, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Sink, the approximately $180,000 includes $167,000 for the mail-in ballot, $1,000 for the publication of the election ballot, and about $10,000 to $15,000 on public communication costs.
Got it. Thank you.
So just on that note, also keep in mind that the school already has $50,000 budgeted for that. So 150,000 minus 167 brings that 180 actually down, just FYI.
Will be like 130 because 180 minus 50 to 130. Okay. But still, that's 130 that comes right out of the classroom. That's right from operational that we didn't budget. Okay. Yeah, you're a funny guy. Anybody else for pages 10 through 13? No, I hear you. Okay. The next thing I have is page 16. Anybody have anything else before 16? I see lots of folds in your book, Rudy. Okay, so, oh yeah, 16 is the no election. Yeah, I already made a comment about that. This is one occasion in which, and I know that different people out there would say that I'm, a junior dictator in the making, but no, that's not the case. It's just the idea of this is a special circumstance, and it's a circumstance under which we can't afford a gap. I personally don't believe that the legislature is going to be able to fill that gap in 60 days. So it might be something to consider. 17, anybody? Or we conduct an election later, or either way, if we do an election later, there could be a gap if we don't do it in February or March. Right. Anybody? 17 and 18, I was just kind of a thank you for listing the other districts and what they were doing. Anybody else right now? None? And then I have 19, no way to close the gap. Oh, yeah, the only way to close the gap, and Rudy brought this up, this is 19. We don't have the money. We're not going to come up with $9 million. So it really would have to be one of the very, very, very earliest things the legislature took up and actually managed to decide in like the opening week of the legislature.
Mr. Cody, President Cody, you never know what the legislature could do. That could just be like the operating bill. That's it's either usually House Bill 2, which actually is the feed bill, right? Which actually is the bill that says let's pass this bill and fly it through the legislature and let's get the governor to sign it so that way we can have operating costs to run the state legislature. Right. So they might have something like that in mind because there is some one-time fees
to attach it to there. There was so much debate on this at the 11th hour that I understand. Yeah. The eternal optimist, Rudy. All right. Anybody else for any of those slides? Any concerns? Shall we move on to the rest of the presentation?
On slide 22, we have listed for the near future or intermediary future the other elections that will be affected by House Bill 98. In 2021, the GO bond and House Bill 33 measures are up for election. 2022, ETN again. 2024, SB 9, and 2025, the GO bond and ATN. So now we would like to ask whether the board would like to discuss the ETN election and discuss the other elections that will be affected at a future time, or if you want to cover the other items.
Why are you laughing over there? Are you guys internally bored down there? But it's interesting stuff, right? Yeah, this is the stuff that this is what gets money into your school.
It's law and bureaucracy. It's fascinating.
I love you, Harvey. Okay, so on 22, really once we start getting in a rhythm, right, then we won't see any threats of gaps. We'll just be voting on things in November instead of February. Is that correct?
President Correa, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Sink, there are some interesting issues that House Bill 98 proposed because they didn't reconcile any of the existing measures in the Tax Administration Act and the House Bill 33 law and the SB 9 law. So we could cover them tonight. However, the hope is that Mr. Melendres and Ms. Siegel and others will be working to reconcile the places where they don't align. So my answer would be there could be wrinkles, but they were aware of them last February, and they have been working to try to remedy them.
Okay, so these are wrinkles that could be worked out in the March portion of the legislative session, so that we could then have elections, essentially instead of having them in February, we would have them 4 months earlier in the November, so that there would be no gaps. So I mean, I don't know that Whatever pleases the rest of the board relative to all the different scenarios, holy smokes, all of the different scenarios that could come into play. Ms. Cashman.
I would, I've gone through all the slides, so I would recommend that we stop at this point because there are problems for us as a board, but hopefully the legislature is going to address those. So rather than, and we have time, but there is language for SB 9 and HB 33 that have to be reconciled. So I would just say, let's stop at this point because it doesn't affect our November election, and hopefully come springtime, we'll have known what the legislature has decided.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, is that, yeah. So the thing that's going to come out down the pike for us, like really soon, if you look at slide 10, really soon meaning in 2 weeks, if we want to have a mail election in February, we have to decide either in 2 weeks or on November 6th. And I'm going to try to keep the agenda on November 6th light because that's the day of the election.
So just really quick on that note, what is the slide that shows the school districts that have already done a mail-in ballot?
Or that are doing it?
Or they're doing it? So results have not come in. They're just doing it, right? No results have come in?
So
what I went at this question is I want to know is, did they have a better turnout by doing a mail-in ballot? No? Yes or no?
President Carrillo, members of the board, Secretary Garcia, what we published in early September are the successful mail-in ballot elections by other entities which are not school districts. They include the City of Las Cruces, Valencia County, and CNM. And I have a couple of copies here if you wanted to share them amongst yourselves, or we can run copies. But
just really quickly, so what was CNM, what did they go for? What was their bond request?
They wanted GeoBond proceeds to build a Sandoval County campus. Approximately 30%, more than 30% of the ballots returned, and more than 60% of those returned ballots approved the measure.
And so was Sandoval County involved in that as well as Bernalillo County?
Can I just quickly, for the benefit of the public and for our student members here,
can you pull this closer?
Introduce in an acronym, and we say what it is?
Yes.
What it.
Yes.
Secretary Garcia, CNM stands for Central New Mexico Community College. And as for the partnership with the counties, I'm not sure about that. It's not on this handy sheet.
Because if the CNM is actually located out of Bernalillo County, they're going to construct a new facility, and in Sandoval County, that's just it. So we don't know.
No, she has it. We have it. She has it there. Like the turnout was, I mean, our turnouts are usually 3, the highest was 10%, and that was the year she just got up. And that was in 2011, and usually it's around 3 to 4%. It was like over 25 to 30%, but the results were roughly the same, with 2/3 supporting a bond and 1/3 not.
So we're saying that, or you're saying that actually it is better to have a special election?
You know.
I think when we were given that information, it was mixed results. That not every issue passed, but some did. So, and from what I understand, some of it may have been how they informed the public on those issues that created a problem. They didn't try to get the public engaged.
But we're so engaging that that's not going to be a problem. We're going to send our student board members out with really old iMacs that weigh 30 pounds and say, please don't make me use this. Any additional questions for Ms. Sullivan or Mr. Ryan right now? Dr. Ryan? Doctor, Mr. Oh, got it. Ms. Cashman.
So are we trying to tonight understand the appetite of the board on whether we want to go with a special election, we want to do a hybrid model? I mean, time is of the essence. We've got either the next meeting or the following meeting if we plan to go out and do an election in February. So time is of the essence. I had originally thought that I would prefer a hybrid type of election, do something where we didn't ask the voters to get us so we could get to November and have the regular election. But I also agree with Board Member Price in the past. I have a problem imposing a tax without asking our voters. So to me right now, I think probably we need to go and do a special election, potentially take the money for that special election out of our cash reserves, and then once the election passes, replenish our reserves is what I'm thinking might be my personal opinion after looking at all of the information.
My initial hit would be, and the reason I say that is to not go to the voters because this is not a tax increase. It's just continuing the ETN as we've had it for the last many, many years. And then to have the hybrid thing where in November, basically we go to the voters for that following year. So it precedes that, what would normally happen in February, it precedes it in November. I'm perfectly fine doing a mail ballot. Hopefully the legislature will find a way to reimburse us the $180,000. The main thing is I don't want us to dilly-dally on this. I'd be perfectly fine with 4 of us here tonight it's not an action item, is it? How's it? No.
But we can get a sense of if it's going to be on.
I would put it on, either way, you know what? I'm going to put this on action on October 16, so we have to make a decision. All right? And I'm hoping that 5 of us are here on October 16. And that's, because we can make the decision whether it's February or March on that day. We don't have to delay. Does anyone else have an opinion as to which direction they'd like to go on the ETN vote at this time? Ms. Price?
I don't want to skip the voters.
Okay. So it still holds true, don't take money out of my pocket without asking me. Got it. And just curiously, I know you guys don't vote yet because you're juniors, but what are your thoughts on this? Sorry to put you on the spot, but kind of not sorry.
Okay. Personally, I think my opinion's been reiterated enough times, but it really is along the lines of go to the voters. There's maybe a continuation, but it's still an allocation of funding. It's still something that I think we need input.
Okay.
So if that takes the form of a mail-in ballot, in my opinion, that's just getting more people at least the opportunity to think about it. See,
Yeah.
this is the paper that came in the mail today.
And if we engage them like you're suggesting, then we'll get, eventually, I guess, more support for the district.
Definitely.
Great.
Definitely.
Mercedes, what do you think?
Because honestly, I've never even heard of ETN before until now. I feel like I don't have enough knowledge on this subject, but I can agree with Harvey when we say that involving the people would help voting, but that's just all I can say as of right now.
All right. Well, that's foundationally, right? You're saying voting when you're dealing with money. Yeah. So, no, you're saying quite a bit. I'm happy to get both of your opinions. It matters. Mr. Garcia.
Just really quick. If we did not go out to the voters, the tax would still remain the same, right?
Correct.
Okay.
They would just be, a couple of them would be really upset. What was really interesting is last time, so you can go back to the video and look. There were a few people that came, that was like the same 6 people that came that said we were defiling democracy. But it passed overwhelmingly. There were like editorials and different things that said you did the right thing that very first time around. It was very controversial, the idea of doing this without going to the voters. But ever since then, it's passed at least 2/3 to 1/3. So we're lucky that people in our district, not lucky, we're fortunate that people in our district really support our schools. Harvey.
Just out of curiosity, what is the current rate for this ETN tax rate?
I don't know it off the top of my head. It's like $500,000. It's 11 million each year is what it is. It's $55 million over 5 years, but I don't know what that rate is. Y'all over there?
I don't know.
That's kind of hard to determine because it's up to the tax assessor to get direction from the state legislature. So then the tax assessor gets what he's allowed to create that rate. He can't create whatever rate he wants. It's based off of the previous year's valuations of what the entire county brings in for property tax. So then that's how the tax assessor actually adjusts that rate. So then he goes to the Board of County Commissioners and says, this is where I think it should be at, based on what the state legislature approves the tax assessors throughout the 33 counties to fluctuate that rate.
Rudy, isn't there a formula they use? So if it's 11 mil in the year, what does 11 million figure out as? We had that number. I don't know. We don't have it tonight, but
Mr. President, I can get that for you. Either just send it to you, or we'll have it obviously for your next meeting.
If you could have it for well, I don't know that our student board members will be at the next meeting. If you want to send it just by email to all of us, if you could please include our student board members in that email.
Yeah, you can have Eric.
So just really quick, what happens when your family pays property taxes? That tax actually goes to this huge pie. Schools get majority of that, community college gets some of that, county, fire, excise tax, all these different taxes get a piece of the pie.
So, Mr. President, with your permission, would it be okay if the RBC financial advisor and I get together and then send the information to the superintendent, and then she will distribute it to each of you?
Of course.
I'm not sure I have all the email addresses, but she can use her regular distribution.
I guess the only question on that really quick is what is the financial director, are we going to be charged for that? Because if we're going to be charged for that, it's just as easy as 401 to call the tax assessor and the treasurer and ask him what the tax rate is.
No, it's part of his whole process.
You won't be charged.
Yeah.
And Deputy Superintendent, you'll make sure the students get copied. I just wrote a note. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Price. So are we all kind of agreed? We're going to put this on the agenda on the 16th, so we're good. Excellent. And if you guys want to come for that piece of it, you're welcome to. Of course. Thanks. If I lose a bet or something else comes along, no, I get it. Okay. So unless there are any other additional questions regarding the ETN and this particular issue, we're going to move on. All right, we're moving on. Thank you very much, Ms. Sullivan, Dr. Ryan, and Mr. Melendrez. And then, okay, next item on the agenda is the $250,000 cash balance allocation to communities and schools. This is action item 10A, and Deputy Superintendent Sink, I'm going to go ahead and read what the summary is here, and then what the recommendation. I'll let you read the recommendation from the superintendent.
Okay.
All right. So this is, I know you guys are really familiar with communities and schools and the work they do with the district. I know all of us are. Okay. So this is taking $250,000 from our cash reserves. Right, we haven't budgeted for this. This is from our cash, and allocating money to communities and schools to expand the scope of their work. And I know they're really active at Capital right now. Not so much, if at all, at Santa Fe High, but in all the feeder schools going into Capital is where we want to have that goal, right? So funding will allow communities and schools to expand its model, which seeks to remove challenging barriers, including those associated with poverty, as part of its plan to serve all schools that feed into Capital High School. In 2017-2018, Ramirez Thomas Elementary and Sweeney Elementary were added by communities and schools. An additional funding of $250,000 would allow the addition of another school, which, as I understand it, would be Nina Otero, and then funds for others, and for additional staff to be hired at an existing CIS school in the feeder. The district currently provides $200,000, that's just part of our annual budget right now, to CIS. CIS's operating budget for the 2018-19 school year is $1.5 million. And Ms. Sink, if you would relay your conversations and then decision or recommendation from the superintendent.
Yes, Mr. President, the superintendent has recommended to approve this.
Okay. And as it says on our sheet, funding source, of course, is our cash balance. And then what I have here to hand out to everybody, and it's good that you guys know this as well, is our cash policy, because we are a very frugal, pragmatic district when it comes to spending our money. Okay? So think of your family. You know, just because you got a big bonus doesn't mean you're going to go out and blow it all. Just because you have a bunch of money in your savings account doesn't mean you're going to blow it all. You have to be prudent in how you use the money. And we are kind of a model district, I believe, in accounting for cash with the state. So you can see in the sheet that you're being given, oh, Rudy, would you mind passing those to Ms. Price and then on to those? You can see how we always want to have a minimum of 5%, absolute bare minimum of 5% of our operating budget in our cash reserves. So this doesn't bring us down to nearly that if we do the 250. And then I believe we all in our packets were given the information as to how those funds would be distributed, right? And then I know that Ms. Julia Bergen, the Executive Director, is here to stand for questions, but we already did a presentation. So if it's okay, I don't care if it's not okay, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion so we can at least discuss. So I'm going to make a motion to approve, entertaining a second, and then discussion.
Second.
And then discussion. And if you have questions for Ms. Bergen?
First of all, Ms. Bergen, thank you for meeting with me individually and in detail explaining how your organization works, and it definitely helps out the schools. The only concern I have on this is regarding reoccurring dollars. So we're going to appropriate $250,000 out of our cash reserves. And I'm just worried about next year and the following year is, we're going to go up here, then we're going to come down, and some students may or may not actually get the great institutional knowledge that your services provide the following year. That's the only concern I have.
Ms. Cashman.
I've talked with Ms. Bergen, I've talked with the superintendent, and I also talked with Board Member Noble before this meeting. I have no problems going ahead and allocating a minimum of $100,000 up to $250,000 for communities in school, as long as it's with the understanding that this is a one-time expense, because then it has to be incorporated into future budgets. And one of the things where, again, we have not done, but as long as we continue to employ the fair student budgeting, then these schools should be they're receiving extra dollars based on, here's a typical student, and then if you have all of these needs, we allocate more money. Well, communities in school is to helping to fill those additional needs of counselors, helping with homelessness. And so to me, it seems like that's a discussion we'll have to have on when we get to budgeting, because when I met with communities in school, their national guideline is that we should spend about 30%, they should receive about 30% from a district, and then they get money from grants, from donors, and we're way below our 30% basic threshold. But I just don't see that we can, for one time we can jump up, but we can't continue to keep on taking out a cash reserve. And to me, the superintendent and I talked, this is a good example of what the sufficiency lawsuit is all about, to help our kids that have needs. I like the idea of trying to have all the schools that feed into Capitol High all using the same type of support system from K all the way up. So I would recommend, even though it's a little bit of a stretch to go to $250,000, that's what I would recommend, that the board go ahead. I know when I spoke with Board Member Noble, she shared the same views, that $100,000 minimum, and that's to help them. They have some operational problems right now. Things are costing a little bit more than what they anticipated, and so to help with that $100,000 to make sure they stay solvent and that they don't have to keep on going back to the donors to ask for additional funds. So for me, it's all what we've been talking about for the sufficiency lawsuit, and I know that they are talking about it in the legislature, that they would like to see programs like this throughout New Mexico, but a big push to help the rural districts first. And so we are not a rural school district, so we might not get those dollars. So we need to take care of our own kids. And I think we've all had experiences or seen how they work. As I said, I'd like to see this program in all of our schools, but we can't afford it at this point in time. But that's my recommendation, is to move ahead.
Ms. Price, I just didn't, because I'm going to speak, but I wanted to give you the opportunity first. Okay. So I'm glad you mentioned the Yazzie decision, because that's the first thing on my little list of notes right here. I mean, there's no question that what Yazzie calls for and what Judge Singleton called for and the work that CIS does is completely aligned in supporting our English language learners and students receiving free and reduced lunch. And I'm going to state some of these bullets here because I want them on the record. I do agree with Ms. Cashman that we'll do the $250 now. We'll find a way, maybe with additional funding from the legislature next year, to incorporate. Maybe it ends up being that we're doing $450 annually. Maybe it's $500,000 annually. But we'll find a way. We want to make sure our kids are served. Somebody used the sausage metaphor earlier, but how we grind the sausage, you know, sometimes it's inconsequential so long as our kids are getting served. The great thing I love is this brings online Nina Otero. And I mean, that's a big school, it's an important school, it's a flagship school on the south side like El Camino, and to bring them online and give additional supports to the others that are all feeding capital, I think is just fantastic. The other thing it does is it brings on additional qualified staff. So we talked, I think it was 6 weeks ago is when this was last here, right? You were taking the kids to college. Okay, so 6 weeks ago. It also brings on additional qualified staff that help to serve the district in one of our really big goals, which was increased counseling, safety, and, if you will, bullying, violence, all the preventions that people with an MSW can provide. And that's who their staff is. So because we haven't yet been able to hire some of the interventionists, if you will, those guidance counselors that we allotted the Alvord money, that's going to take time, right? Because just attracting people to come to Santa Fe to live and hire those positions is going to take time. But here, we already have a system that's built in to do this work. And we stated that this is one of our primary goals. I as well spoke with Dr. Garcia to make sure that she felt comfortable in terms of the bottom line on cash reserves. We always we have our cash reserves, and then we have our super duper emergency never ever touch reserves. And there's no way we'd ever touch that, ever, ever, ever. And I think all of us are super comfortable with that. The other thing I was told was if there was perhaps concerns or opposition to this within the district, it might come from people who would ask us, try to be really diplomatic here, different people that might ask us, hey, if you have that money, why can't you put it here? To which I would answer, this board is a kids first board, okay? And while there are different needs all throughout the district, our primary, they can't vote, but our primary constituency is kids. So for 7 years for me, for 5 years for Ms. Price, almost a complete 4 for Maureen, it's always been kids first. And so this really shows that we're putting our money where our mouth is, because these supports are so, so important. The thing that I would probably ask maybe going into this coming year and the following, I know that it's super important for Mayor Weber to really work with the public schools in developing plans for wraparound services. So to the extent possible, Julie, I'd love to see, I'm sure you do it already, but different meetings with Mayor Weber and his child services team to see how we're not duplicating services, we're getting the most bang for our buck. Because $250,000, that's a lot of money, all right? But we love the work you do. We know it just supports our kids. So obviously I'm going to support this. Any further discussion or any thoughts? I know it's not at Santa Fe High right now, but that is something that we're looking at. I mean, we're going where the priority, where the need is greatest first. But Julie and I have talked repeatedly about developing the plan to feed schools such as, Salazar, I'm not doing Chaparral, all the many schools, right, that feed Santa Fe High.
Because we know that's just going to result in success, in higher graduation rates, in less hardships for families. So, Mr. Garcia and then either one of our student board members, should you want to pipe in?
The only way I'll support this if Julie Bergen can actually guarantee me that Jill will stay in Santa Fe County schools forever.
Pardon me?
The only way that I can support this, that if you can guarantee the school board that you will stay, your organization will only stay within the Santa Fe Public School District forever.
Oh.
And you personally, you can't leave if someone tries to steal you away.
President Carrillo, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Sink, and Secretary Garcia, thank you. I appreciate the sentiment, and about me personally, have no plans to leave Santa Fe, but actually we are looking at strategies to expand our work in more rural sectors of the state, which I think I've shared with all of you, and one of the reasons that our success here means so much to not only the organization, but obviously your perspective about our ability to support students and their success. We've been able to establish a strong model and a strong organization, and I think we build off of that in order to be in a good, strong position to replicate in other parts of the state. And the work that we've been doing over the last 5 years at the legislature to compel that body to provide funding for community school models, not exclusively communities in schools, but community school models, so that more of this work can be actually implemented in other parts of the state. It's been a huge part of Communities in Schools of New Mexico. Communities in Schools National actually pays for a lobbyist to support that agenda that could potentially bring more funding to the work we do here in Santa Fe, but also in other parts of the state. So,
kids first, right? The last thing I'd say is the Capitol High School graduations. They're really stunning. The number of kids that are the first time to graduate in their homes from high school because of the work of Communities in Schools and AVID. And then what's really cool, especially when you go to the Sterling Silver's breakfast, the overwhelming majority of students, young adults at that point, right, who say they want to go to school, whatever it is they're doing, and they want to stay in New Mexico and give back. And it's just remarkable to hear all these young people say that. It's wonderful.
Just really quick, I don't want to go on with this forever all night long, but you're all right. These 2 or 3 different organizations actually did bring Capitol High School from here to here, as well as the previous administration that was there. So whenever these nonprofits can actually work with the administration and the schools willing to skyrocket graduation rate, I think that's great. Thank you.
Unless there's any other comments, are we ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? And I think Ms. Sink brought her checkbook, so if you just want to get that tonight, you keep that on hand, don't you? Okay. There you go, right?
Deputy Superintendent Sink, are you paying for the breakfast burritos?
There you go.
Just real quick on my comment regarding previous administration and principals that actually have been at Capitol High School that you've worked with that did an excellent job at Capitol High School. Thank you.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Thank you. And Mr. President, may I say a few words?
Of course.
Is that appropriate? So first of all, on behalf of our board and staff, thank you. This is remarkable and extremely valuable, both from a financial point of view. It absolutely allows us to serve more children and students in the Santa Fe Public Schools, and particularly it will allow us to close that South Side feeder, that pattern that we've really committed to accomplishing, and having that K through 12th grade continuum of support for students. So thank you for really believing in our work. And it's also such a validation of the work that our really extraordinary psych coordinators do. And they are among the most dedicated, passionate professionals who work so hard on behalf of our community's young people. And we find often that the stories that kids share with our staff are so heart-wrenching, but by way of the work that they do in support of those kids, the outcomes are often really heartwarming, and I think that that's so important. And to your point, Secretary Garcia, about
Capitol High School, when we started there in 2012, I think graduation was at about 62%, and now it's, I think, 72 or 73%. And we by no means take full credit for that, but I think having communities and schools in a school, not only to support students but staff, and really create the opportunity for teachers to focus on what is their job and allow kids who are struggling and have needs around academic supports or basic needs supports, social emotional supports, they know they can come to their site coordinator and they'll get that support. So really just a tremendous amount of gratitude from all of us, and I look forward very much to continuing to keep you apprised of our work as we move forward. And finally, this is a partnership, and we work really hard from my position, working with you and members of the cabinet and with Superintendent Garcia and her team to make sure that the work we're doing in schools really is in alignment with the goals set forth by this body, as well as for the principals in each of our schools. And the format that we put in place as communities and schools really is designed to ensure that alignment is in place. So we're all working toward the same goals, and that is to ensure that our kids can get to school, engage, learn, and be successful. So thank you so very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Please extend our best wishes to your staff.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we're not going to keep you here till 11 o'clock tonight. So the next items on the agenda is the first reading of policy 329, and then after that is the first for reading of 601. As I understand it, or Ms. Sink and or Ms. Sullivan, you could probably give us just a very abbreviated review of these, because as I understand it, there's only one but kind of change in each of the policies, one relating to including e-cigarettes and the other relating to adult possession. So, Ms. Sink.
Well, I'll let Lisa go ahead and speak to this, but I did give him that update.
President Carrillo, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Sink. These two policies, one having to do with students, the other having to do with people who come to school sites who aren't students or staff, basically are being updated to reflect current regulations and also practices. And I believe they're cleaner and more streamlined. And we also tried to sort of future-proof the description of tobacco and nicotine products, because the delivery devices and the types of products are evolving faster than we can name them.
It's just uncanny to me. Sometimes I'm at a football game, either at Capitol or at Santa Fe High. You know, the kids aren't allowed to have, the kids are definitely not allowed to have any of these things, right? And as if they're not going to be noticed, taking a big puff off of an e-cigarette that lets off this sickeningly sweet smell and a huge cloud, like no one's going to notice.
Just really quick, and I know the scary part about it is whenever you come into the cannabis, which is actually now filled within one of those little tubular things you inhale, it actually doesn't smell like marijuana whatsoever. That's
it's. I tell you, as a parent, it's also harder and harder. And Lisa's got teenagers, harder and harder, right? Should we just take these together? Do you guys have any questions about either one of these? Because they're going to be brought back for a second reading. The possession thing is important because clearly if there's an adult who smokes, they just can't do it on campus, but if they have chew in their pocket, it's not against the law, not against the rules, right?
Right.
Well, right now, but it's not. Right now it is, but that's what one of these policies, the D. That's what that changes. So that if we have a contractor, even if there's a teacher that might smoke, if they can have a pack of Camels, in their pocket or in their backpack, because they're an adult, they could roll it up in their sleeve if they're Lucky Strikes, right, in their sleeve, because we can't really tell those adults they can't smoke. Isn't that correct? How I'm characterizing this, Ms. Sullivan?
President Carrillo, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Sink, you're correct in terms of the practical implications of the regulation that PED wrote. Unfortunately, someone wrote it in a way where, in theory, we could have the authority to ask people to leave, to drive off campus with their products, but I think if they leave them in their car or in their purse and they don't flaunt it, then we have no reason to stop and give someone a hard time if they're not flaunting it. And we worked with the PED staff on this. We asked them what they intended by the way they wrote their regs, and short answer is they wanted it to be practical.
We like practical. Neither of you smoke, do you? Because we wouldn't have let you be on this board if you did. No. Ms. Cashman.
I recommend that we go ahead and approve first reading for both
Both?
policies.
Second.
I just wanted to say, this awfully sounds like don't ask, don't tell.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of things I'm sure we don't want to know anybody does. So Ms. Cashman made the motion, Mr. Garcia made the second for both policies. We'll do both of them at the same time. And all those in favor for the first reading of policy 329, policy 601, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Board discussion, possible action. Anybody have anything for board discussion tonight?
Just really quick, a couple things. I'd like to know where we are with the mediation in regards to Turquoise Trail. We were supposed to have an executive session on that roughly 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and that hasn't been brought forward.
We are not at liberty to comment on anything relative to mediation until it appears on the agenda, because that's part of the terms of the mediation.
Just for the record, I don't want to have... Okay.
It's moving along swiftly.
I'm glad two board members know about it. Good.
Right.
Second of all, is the new employee that we've just hired, I'd like to get introduced to that new employee. If maybe we can bring her to the next school board meeting. I don't know if she's on board yet or not. That's the one that
Is she a doctor?
PED.
I do not believe she's a doctor, and she starts on the 15th of this month.
Okay. And then also in regards to the filming on the campus, that particular film that they were talking about, I was asked about it at the county, and I was surprised that they... In regards to filming on school property, if we could somehow let the students know that there's going to be some filming, there is some detouring going out there, there is some lighting at night or something, so that way the students at any of our schools or parents know about it.
What school was that at?
Santa Fe High.
Did you guys get advance notice on any of that? I know he brought it up, but did you guys get advance notice that you're going to have all these crazy movie people on your campus?
Not that I can recall.
But you're totally plugged in, right, Mr. McGinnis?
I did not get any
No, I know you're
update or
That's fine.
He's
Okay.
very well practiced. He said not that he can recall.
Very right. You should be on the Supreme Court. Okay, that's a whole nother issue. Any other?
Just really quick for the record, there's a gentleman actually that's sitting here in the audience that is totally behind the scenes and does a lot of stuff that people don't realize he does, and just like to recognize him, Mr. Fabian Trujillo. Great job being involved in the community.
Welcome, Fabian. I didn't see you come in.
Millions of people that watch our school board. He is here.
The first gentleman. Yeah. Okay, so for the first thing I'm gonna say is, and this occurred to me the other day, just in terms of, because facilities, I'm sorry, left. Miguel. Facilities is going to be part of that study session coming up very soon, I think it's, and one of the things we may want to consider, and Jeff is still here, partnering with the city on, is the use of Santa Fe Public Schools facilities for international high-altitude training. Because I know right now there are a lot of organizations, athletic organizations, that go to Colorado Springs. We're higher, we're better, we have great facilities, and if there's a way we can maybe bring that up in the study session and a way to partner with the city to attract more high-altitude athletic training in our city. Ms. Price?
They use the university up there.
In Colorado Springs?
Yes.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that be great if they came here and used some of our tracks and?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, we
Yeah.
don't have the facilities that, I've been up there.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful in the cafeteria, see all that international work that they do with each other, but we would have to improve our facilities.
Yeah. Ms. Sink brought her checkbook. Ms. Cashman?
We already have teams that come to Santa Fe to do high altitude training, especially in swimming
And
they're
track.
they're using.
And the
our-
Kenyans come. No, I know all that, but what about if there were a partnership with the city to attract more? More means more money, more visibility. Anyway, that's just there. So the second thing is kind of a weird sort of a quandary, and I discussed this with Dr. Garcia. On October 16, the housing issue is coming back before the board, the resolution. In these last 2 weeks, I've been working diligently with the county, and the county has been working diligently to address all of the concerns that were brought up 2 weeks ago. Now, the reason, and I know that on Saturday, we decided on this new, Ms. Price, so on Saturday, it's probably in his email, Tim's email, we decided on this new process relative to resolutions, that it starts basically with a comment and board review, and then there's going to be 2 readings, so that, and we're always going to get the first resolution at least 1 week prior, so that we have time to work on it. So what's interesting is I took off this item on board discussion on Friday afternoon, not knowing, of course, that we'd be discussing this on Saturday morning. So that's why I'm bringing this up tonight, but it is coming up for discussion and action on October 16. There will be people from the county and possibly the city as well here to address it, because Mayor Weber has come out in support. The resolution will go to the entire board well in advance, at least 1 week in advance. You know what, we got to start making sure to send stuff to you guys just as a matter of course. Can you please make a special note that anything that goes to board members, unless it's confidential, also goes to student board members? Because you're our people. You're our peeps. And so I just wanted to let the board know that, that's the case. I don't have anything else for board discussion. Do either of you? Anybody have anything for advanced planning? You know, thank you. Because given the last meetings, oh my God. So it is a custom. I don't know, Mercedes or Harvey, if anyone told you this. The custom in the last several years, as the holidays rolls around, is for you to get small gifts of your appreciation for the board members. Were you told that by Jeff when you came on board? Jeff, did you let them know that? The gifts for board members for holiday time? Híjole! Okay, so anyway, no, you don't have. Anyway, I'm really glad you're here, and you guys, I love your engagement already, and it's only the first week of October. So, hearing nothing else, are we good to go? We're good to go. Adjourn.
I was going to mention, but I'll just tell you that for October 9th, we're looking at Santa Fe Public Schools recreational facilities use, and then the legislative